this morning is all about the numbers of St. Barnabas, and we want to start with what we call our mission-based budget. But first of all, don't you love our logo, our pledge campaign logo, Making Disciples 2017? I like that a lot. I love it that we are in the first, it's like what I said just a moment ago. In the first order of things, we are followers of Jesus. And we are disciples of Jesus, and that's what this logo wants to help us with. So hopefully you all receive the ministry-based budget in a letter from me, and or you would have seen it in church a few weeks ago. So Ann, would you turn to that, please? We call it, most organizations would call this a mission-based budget, but in the church, missions often is a synonym for outreach, and so if we'd have said a mission-based budget, it might have confused people. So we call it a ministry-based budget. But what I'd like you to hear is it's a budget that focuses on the mission of the church, and we're defining that as making disciples. Now, there's lots of ways to spin out the mission of the church. We could say the mission of the church is to reconcile all people to God through Jesus Christ, to reconcile them to God and one another. We could say the mission of the church is connecting people to Jesus. This year we're saying the mission of the church is to be disciples and make disciples. And so what this budget wants to do is to help us see the major categories of the ministry of St. Barnabas that fulfill that mission to make disciples, and how those categories are actually funded. That's the goal of this budget. Now, following what I understand to be common practice in many nonprofits and to some degree in the church, other churches, and so we're fitting into that, are going into this model of saying, how does everything we are and have and do connect to the mission? So, instead of line items like utilities, instead of that, we say, what does paying the lighting bill on this building this morning, how does that plug into the ministry or the mission of St. Barnabas? All these copies that you have on your table, all the time it took to make this document and to have this up here, how does the staff time and the cost of the paper and etc., how does that fulfill the mission and ministry of St. Barnabas? Now, by the way, we also have a line item budget that breaks all those things out in a different way. But what we want to present to us is, how does everything that we do connect to the mission ministry of St. Barnabas? Does that make sense to you? Does anybody have a question about that first? I just want to start with, are there any questions about that? Allie. Hang on just one second. Do we have a microphone for thank you. Thank you, Nick.
My name is Allie Tosberg.
Thank you.
My question is, the so the bill, the utility bill.
Yes, ma'am.
Is that spread amongst all these things?
Yes, it is.
It's not in one chunk.
No, it's not.
And so basically, every sort of building cost and staff cost is spread among all these things.
Yes, it is.
Thank you.
You're welcome. Good question. Thank you. And thank you for identifying yourself. Nick, would you come forward, please, right here with Alice? Would you start with your name for us, please, Alice?
Hi, Alice MacArthur. I noticed that you're applying cost accounting principles to this, which, of course, is used in corporate environments also. And I admire the work that you have done. You're a cost accountant, whoever it is. And I understand that one of the things that you would have to do to be strict about it is yourself, for instance. You would have to be able to tell your cost accountant the proportion of time that you devote to each of those activities.
Yes, all of the staff did that.
Yes, that's great.
Ever so imperfectly, we did
Yes,
that.
yes. You weren't using timesheets or anything,
No,
but
no,
but
we
you
didn't
did-
waste time making timesheets.
Right, but that I have to admire that.
Thank you, Alice, very much. And by the way, you said please be seated. You said something that I wanted to say earlier. Sitting to my right are Linda and John Kimmer. Would you guys just stand? I know you didn't know I was going to do this. Please stand for me, John. I know. Thank you. So, Linda is our treasurer of 17 years, and John is the chair of our foundation of 17 years. And you just can't know all that they give us in terms of the finances of St. Barnabas. By the way, we just had an audit, and the 12 and a half years I've been here, every year we've received an unqualified letter from our auditors, and so we did that again this year. I presume it's the same thing the years before I came. An unqualified opinion from our auditors. And these two do all just hours and hours and hours of work to work with the auditors. They also, Linda especially, did gobs of work on helping us put this together. And this year we transitioned from a part-time bookkeeper to a part-time controller. So that change was not a small change. And there was a transition time when we had no one, and Linda was working full-time. We decided to double her pay as a volunteer. She worked full-time during that. So, you just don't get lots of opportunities for the behind-the-scenes folks to say thank you. Could we say thank you for what they've given to us? Okay, any other questions about what I've just said about how we allocated our time and all the expenses and resources of our campus to this budget? Any questions about that? Okay, so I want to speak to especially the mission outreach category because it might surprise some people that it's so large. I want you to know that what's included in that is our mission share fund to the diocese, which is $324,000 a year. This 2016, it's 2017. 2016. 2016, it's projected to be $324,000 to the diocese. You guys say, hear, hear, that we're supporting the work of the diocese and the national church. Would somebody say, hear, hear? Hear. Thank you very much. Okay. It also includes the monies that we give for our mission partners. What formerly was Hearts and Hands is now comes right out of our budget. Then I need to say something, and this is a good place to say this about everything. And you might want to write this down. 1,600, 500 plus, and 455. 1,600, 500 plus, and 455. 1,600 communicants on our rolls. 500 people in church on Sunday average throughout the course of the year, and 455 households making a financial pledge to St. Barnabas. That represents a community that's deployed in all of these ministries, and each of these ministries have lots of subcategories. So sometimes I talk with the staff and with the vestry, and I think to myself, and Erica, how many active members do we have? I mean, and so by active, I mean, and beyond worshiping on Sunday, they're involved in something. And for many of our members, they're involved in a whole lot of somethings. So, maybe the starting number is 400 to 450 or 500. Then maybe it goes to 600, and maybe it goes to 800. So the staff work with those members to organize ourselves, to prepare ourselves, to train ourselves, to deploy ourselves to be disciples of Jesus doing Jesus' work. And I think we have something like 12 or so full-time staff. I can never keep track, not counting the grounds crew, about 12 or so full-time staff that work with all of our members who give thousands of hours. I want to say it again. Thousands of hours to do the work of Jesus in the world. And that's our mission. That's why we're here as staff, to enable and equip and support the members of the church to be the ministers. Does that make sense to you? So now come back to these mission and outreach ministry. So our 12 or 13 mission partnerships, thousands of hours of our members are supported by the staff in making those things happen. So let's just start with one, Angel Tree. How many of you have been involved with Angel Tree? I want you to look at this, okay? So you all understand the nightmare behind organizing that, right? And all that goes into that. So when this number appears here at $491,000, it includes $80,000 of staff time to serve all the members in fulfilling that mission and ministry. Does that make sense to you? So, it's easy to just think about the actual dollars that we give, but the dollars that we give are small compared to the giving of our lives. So, traditionally, we've had, the last few years, about $45,000 in actual financial commitment to support our mission partnerships. But that money actually follows. It doesn't lead. It follows thousands of hours of service. Thousands of hours of service. And that's our mission. You guys, I want you to hear me. Many of you heard me say this before. The bishop said it yesterday, and so did his friend Jeffrey Johns. The mission of the church is not to be a soup kitchen. The mission of the church is not to be a homeless shelter. The mission of the church is not to be a food bank. The mission of the church is not to be a university. The mission of the church is not to be a social club. The mission of the church is to make disciples, to make followers of Jesus, to make better human beings. If the world needs anything, it needs better human beings. I would suggest, actually I would shout it from the rooftops, that our mission is the most important mission of any organization in the world. That we would make disciples of Jesus, better human beings, and then they leave this place and go make a better world. They go make soup kitchens and homeless shelters and food banks and get involved in cancer research and get on university boards and serve the world in so many, many ways. And it's not just because of us, but that's what we're supporting. When we say our mission is to make disciples of Jesus, that's what we mean. Better, if I could say it this way, divine, Christ-like human beings. That's our mission. You had a comment, Erica?
Oh, we did the numbers a few years ago, and it wasn't just it was 22,000 hours annually was our guesstimate for how much time we give.
Yeah, it's annually. It's remarkable. I hope that inspires you. Yeah. Thank you. All right. Bill, do you have a question? Is there a question on your face?
Well, I for one, think this is an important document because it communicates the brand and values of our church, and so it's important. I was one of the ones that fell off the chair when I read the 22%.
Right,
that surprised me. And I don't want to split hairs, but I just wonder broadly what proportion of the $50,000 that goes to the diocese, what portion of that is used in what we know as outreach, or what is it overhead there?
I cannot say that. I don't know, Bill, but I would. A lot of it is used. Most of it is used. Actually, I'm sorry. Two major categories. One is to support all the churches in the diocese, and the other is to support the needs of the world. And I cannot tell you which is which, and some goes to the national church. But by the way, I'm also glad you asked the question, because I want to tell you all a story. A few years ago, we received a $25,000 check from members of St. Barnabas And they're people that have some physical challenges and are aged and can't do a lot. But they have significant financial resource. So we got a check in the mail for $25,000, and they wanted to serve the needs of the children in Arizona with things like Angel Tree. So we said, we wrote them a letter and said, thank you very much. We used their $25,000 for Angel Tree and some other things. We wrote them a letter and told them. 3 days later, they walked into the church office with a check for $50,000. Said, we are so inspired by what you've done. And what was most meaningful to them is that they couldn't do stuff, but they had financial resources. And it was meaningful to them that they could give the dollars that allowed more people to serve and do Christ's work. Isn't that cool? We used that $50,000 and wrote them another letter, and ever since we've received $100,000 a year. And that's in this category, Bill. How about that? Isn't that cool? And by the way, some of that is actually not there. Some of it is and some of it isn't, and that's all about this being the first time we've done this and deciding what goes where, and et cetera. So one of the things we've used with those resources is, are you all familiar with the Scottsdale School Program for underprivileged children that don't have food? And so we work with the schools to buy lunches and meals for them that they take home on the weekends. You all familiar with that? So we give a significant gift to that. Brian.
Does that also include Vista del Camino?
Does it? Yes, it does. All right. Okay, before we move on, any questions about this? I mean, this is for you to ask questions. Mary.
Wait, Mary.
Let's bring you the mic.
Wait, Mary. Sorry, I didn't mean to go in front.
Oh, my name is Mary Schmidt, and I just love this because it makes me feel a real part of the community to know that no matter how big or small my pledge, I have a stake in all of this.
Yes.
And that's important to me to know that. So it's great to have it broken down like this.
Thank you, Mary. Thank you very much.
Finn over there.
Yes.
Getting
your
my steps
exercise.
in. I'm getting my steps in. Yeah, there you go.
Hi, I'm Finn Downhill, and Mary said what I was going to say first, so thank you, Mary. I had a conversation with a parishioner during the week, and a lot of people, like outside in the business world, when they think about budget, they think of salaries as line item, because it's almost always the biggest line item on every single budget. So I think this is a really important and significant document to allow us to have that conversation with people, because it's not like CEOs making hundreds of thousands of dollars in bonuses and all that nonsense. It's about the church and making disciples, and I think this document, we should all embrace this. I certainly will, and if I had had it during the week, I could have had this conversation more intelligently with this parishioner, because I think what you've done is an excellent way for all of us to explain what we are as a church, and the money, the dollar sign, is not as important as what we do.
Yes. Thank you, Finn. Two things to say. Well, you can say yes. Yes. Yeah. Yes. Two things I want to say. We do have a line item budget. We will present it at the annual meeting, and that gives you a different breakdown, and I think that's a valuable document as well. Secondly, we've been working on this for 2 years, and I think I'm right that the initiator of this was our treasurer, Linda Kilmer. I think I'm right about that. Linda offered it, and it took us 2 years to sort of get to the place where we could get it in this form. And by the way, our communications manager, Nicole Moore, put the document itself together. Not bad, huh? And so thank you, Linda, and thank you, Finn. I had another thought. Any other questions? Phyllis.
Could you go into a little bit more detail on what's included in the inviting welcoming and what's included in the leadership mentoring?
Yes, I can. So starting with inviting welcoming, it says sharing the good news, media, and communications. So you you just kind of got to take a pause a moment, and all that it takes to manage our website, all that it takes to manage social media, all the time it takes the laity and the staff to collect that information and then put it out there. The programs we have done to encourage us to become a welcoming and inviting church, and you might think that's small, but it's actually quite large. Lots of people involved. But have you noticed the people around the campus ask me? Yes, the badges they wear that say "Ask me." May I help? Thank you. May I help? That's right. May I help? And all the time it took to research that and coordinate that group of people, and that's just one piece of many activities we have at St. Barnabas to welcome folks. Now, I didn't know exactly when I was going to say this, and I'll probably say it more than once this morning, but you heard me preach this. I got to attend 7 of our Living Generously dinners, and over and over and over, I heard people say how welcoming and friendly and inviting we are. And I want you to know it doesn't just happen, especially not in churches, because most churches start with, until they intentionally engage this, they start from the place, I can't wait to get to church to see my friend. Jay, how are you? How have you been? It's good to have you back from your summer travels. All's well and you're great. It's all good. And when I do this, I don't see John over here. I'm totally focused on Jay, and I don't see that John is alone. And up walks Scott and says, "Hey, man, how's it going, you guys? I noticed Jay's back. Jim, isn't it good to have him back?" And so we're having our own little very friendly conversation, but for the stranger, we're not friendly until somebody points that out to us and says to us, we need to become intentional about that. And then that becomes a significant area of ministry, and Phyllis is on that team and knows there's, 4 specific programs to help us do that. So this past week, I was leading the class called the Episcopal Way, and there were 9 people there. 2 of them said they're a couple that had been attending for a year, and they felt welcomed and invited, and they also felt it was safe just to be a pew sitter. And now they've decided to get involved. Jimmy loves that. You know, there's a lot of people walking the streets that the church has wounded. And when they for whatever reason, they decide to come back to church, if they're allowed to just sort of stay hidden, but experience the life of the place. And they said they found it life-giving, and they just needed to heal for a while. Which one? Yes. Yes, Will. And every time you hear me say it, you can say amen. Okay? Then another person said, I came to St. Barnabas 2 years ago because of centering prayer. I got invited to the centering prayer program, and I started attending the centering prayer meetings, and I came to quiet days, but I wasn't a member because I was a member of a denomination. And then I gave you my name, and I've never stopped receiving emails that tell me I matter. You've never stopped reaching out to me, and so now I'm here to learn about what it means to be an Episcopalian. So, all that matters.
I was just saying that I'll make more phone calls.
That's great. That's great. So, does that answer your question, Phyllis?
Yes, thank you. Jim.
And then just one more thing. I'll get back to that. Then all the programs we've done in the last couple of years about being welcoming and about being inviting. Y'all, hopefully you remember some of those.
We have a choice. We can either have people who are new to us come in and find their way through a red book, or we print a bulletin and we prepare it.
Yes.
We have everybody singing.
Yes.
All of those costs
Yes.
to be welcoming.
So what Ann just said is, you notice when you come to church, everything is in the bulletin, right? You just have one document. You're not managing an outline, a prayer book, a hymnal, an announcement sheet, and a scriptures page, right? You understand that? Yeah. it costs money to do it that way, but that's what helps us be welcoming. Thanks, Ann. Now, leadership mentoring. So, I think of leadership as different than management. And I think the leadership task, organizations unknowingly undervalue the leadership task because we get so focused on getting things done, doing other tasks. So what does it mean to give people in leadership roles time to stare out the window and just dream and imagine, where are we going, how are we going to get there? So my staff will tell you that I ask them to spend time doing that. And my senior warden will tell you that he encourages me to spend time doing that. That we would have vision, that we would have strategy, right? Then the mentoring piece of this is that as staff and really as parish leaders, that we would identify people that are called to do ministry and that we would mentor them. Mentor them both in doing ministry and in being leaders, which really means to be servants. And so that's what that category encompasses. Any questions about that? Okay. Does that help, Phyllis? Yeah, no, good. Tom.
Nicole seems to have made quite a nice impact.
Yes.
Do we have a replacement in mind for her?
We're working on it. Just so you know, we put out job descriptions and asked for resumes and whatnot. You have 4? Mm-hmm. We've had 4 responses.
Well, we have 4 people we're talking to.
4 people we're talking to. Thank you very much. Okay. Yep. So help us, Lord.
I wanted to mention somebody who might be useful as a communications person.
We'll talk after this, okay?
Good morning. My name is Will Walker. Father Rector Jim OU, go Sooners.
Wasn't that a challenging defensive struggle last night?
I thought basketball season had started. Has there been a year recently, or when was the last time through our parish Living Generously, were we able to provide either a cost of living adjustment or a salary increase to our clergy and staff?
Wow. Great question. So, you would have to ask that question. Yes, please.
Hold on.
I've been doing the accounting for 17 years, and it has never happened.
Okay, so I have a, thank you. I also have an answer. So I'm going to start with me and tell you I am well paid. I feel respected and appreciated and well compensated. I haven't had a raise in 8 years, but 8 years ago, my salary, in my opinion, reached the level it should stay at, and I'm happy with how I'm paid. I would also say that all the clergy positions that we have at St. Barnabas are in the top of their range in our diocese. Now, I haven't done the research in a while, so I can't be sure of that, Will. But most of them, each one is different. But it's in my mind and heart that they would be well compensated. We have great people. That they would be well compensated for what they do. And it's my understanding that they're all at the top or close to the top of the position they have in the Diocese of Arizona. I think that's also true of actually almost all of our staff. And so we don't do cost of living raises, but we do sort of informal performance evaluations. And it's in my mind, and my senior wardens have helped me with this, that each one is well paid for what they do. Fair enough? Okay. Yes, Melinda. Fair enough, Linda? Yeah, okay.
So just on that note,
it might be interesting for the vestry to do a benchmarking study next year for the diocese. Just a suggestion.
Well, I'll tell you something. Just this convention, we passed a resolution to make all clergy salaries public. So I will tell you, I'm one that wonders whether that's a good idea. But at the next annual meeting, we will report to you the salary of every one of our clergy. Not the rest of the staff, but all the clergy. We're required to do that because of the resolution or the Constitution and canon change that was passed at this convention. So, that Constitution and canon change also tasked the standing committee to do an evaluation of every category of ministry, and those categories of ministry within the context of the evaluation of what kind of congregation they're in, what their salaries ought to be. So we're on that track. Good question. Thank you.
Does that mean that this January?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay.
Yes, ma'am. Well, yeah. That's if it doesn't get changed. But right now, that's where it is.
I got this article in the mail a few days ago, and as I was going through it, my heart was really drawn to pastoral care.
Yes.
Now, I make a monetary pledge every year, but I wonder if I could also pledge time to help those who are quote unquote alone.
Yes, you can. And the way to do that, Elizabeth Rolls is the person who's our primary person managing pastoral care, and Elizabeth could stand. You know Elizabeth. And you could go talk to Elizabeth about how you can serve in that ministry, and we'd love for you to do that.
Amen.
Yes, thank you, Joylene. By the way, remember to identify yourself, please.
Who am I and why am I here? I'm Fred Rector, not to be confused with Jim Rector or Rector Jim. But following up on that thought, once we've digested this approach to the dollars, I'd love to see that 22,000 hours allocated in some way, perhaps in dollars, so we could get another picture.
Yeah. Well, actually, when we did that, we also put a dollar figure to that, so we can do that again.
Yeah.
Now, if not questions, I want to move on to the second half of this presentation, but I want to be sure any question anybody has is answered. You all feel clear about what this is? You feel clear about what we're doing? Okay. So, it's pledge time, and I'm about to completely shift gears, and this is what's important. I'm going to talk to us about the actual total dollars of St. Barnabas and where our financial needs are and kind of where we are with the dollars that are pledged, etc. But I want us to just not. Our pledge drive is not fundraising to a budget. Our pledge drive is responding to the generosity of God in our lives and then understanding how that allows the mission and ministry of St. Barnabas to be fulfilled. Are we good with this? Okay. So, you good, Joanne? All right. Anybody want to say more about that? Maybe somebody could say it more eloquently than me. Okay. Next slide, please. So, in 2015, St. Barnabas received 434 pledges totaling $1,554,000. In 2016, St. Barnabas received 455 pledges totaling $1,638,000. Now, before you go down and read the rest, that's pretty cool, isn't it? That means a 4.8% increase in number of pledges and a 5.4% increase in pledged dollars. Now, if you put that in context, the National Episcopal Church is in decline. You understand that, right? I mean, this is significant, and it's significantly reflective of our growth initiative. Hopefully that's not news to you, right? You know, we've had resources for this growth initiative, and that reflects the impact of that. Now, the numbers behind the numbers, this is very, now by the way, just stop a minute, please. Just stop.
Are you talking to us or yourself?
Both. I want you to know something. People's money is sacred. It's one of the reasons I don't like to talk about this. I can't tell you what it does to me when we ask people to grow their pledge and somebody raises their pledge from $500 a year to $525 a year. Somebody raises their pledge from $432 to $468. I just can't tell you what that means to me. Or somebody reduces their pledge from $700 to $650. You start to understand how our money works in our lives. You know, on the other hand, sometimes somebody will raise their pledge from $10,000 to $20,000. Or they'll lower their pledge from $25,000 to $15,000. It's a very sacred thing. And you need to know I weep over it. You need to know it's among the most meaningful things I do is to understand how people's financial commitment to St. Barnabas works. It's a privilege and an honor. It's my job to pay attention to that, and it's very meaningful to me. So as we look at these numbers, you just got to understand they represent the lives of people. They're not just numbers. So 187 families increased their pledge last year by $151,000. Gosh, that's not small. 90 families at St. Barnabas either lowered their pledge, couldn't renew their pledge because of financial changes, or they died, or they left for some other reason. Lots of people move in transition. That meant a reduction of $187,000. Now just be with me a moment about what that means in our life. Last year we urged us to grow, and we did. And 187 families said yes to that. And that dollar amount, by the way, for those 187 families was about 16% growth in their pledges. And those who died, those who moved away, those whose financial situations changed, ended up being more reductions than those increases. And then our growth initiative gave us 68 new pledging families. Don't you love that? It's the life of the place. I mean, there's not just the life of the place, but that we're growing. And the net result was $84,000 in net increase in pledge dollars. It's hard to talk about money, isn't it? It's a sacred thing. It represents our life, our labors, our security, our children, our vacations, our mortgage, and our response to God's goodness in our lives. It's a sacred thing. Next slide, please. So, the last 3 years, with one more year to go, we have received an investment in growth. That's our growth initiative. We've had 2 families make significant gifts to support our growth initiative. And then we've had other one-time gifts that total about $300,000 a year. And over the course of the last 2 years especially, we've implemented this growth initiative. It really started before that, but the last 2 years or so, we've had these resources to help us do that. Or 3. Yeah, 3 years. So I want you to notice, by the way, this says what we have accomplished. I think if I change that, I would say what we've added to our life with these resources that help us become the growing church year experience is to be. So notice that we've added a full-time communications manager that we're going to need to replace. We've gone from a half-time priest to a full-time. That is from 3.5 priests to 4 priests full-time. We've gone from a part-time music, we added a part-time music ministry assistant, etc. I'll let you all read it. We'll take a moment and just read all the things we've done. Any questions? All these together add an annual cost of about $200,000. These are all annual costs that we've added to our life so that we can grow. Next slide, please. These are one-time costs that we added during this period of time. Any questions? Joanne, Nick has a microphone for you.
I'm Joanne Berg. Is the labyrinth also an additional piece to that?
It was a different gift, which I am going to relate to that. But
okay.
Yes, we did add a labyrinth, but it's not part of this.
Jim Berg, Joanne's assistant.
Yes.
What is the 4-year period in calendar years that you're talking about, Jim?
We're in the 3rd. Next year's the 4th. Now, it's a little fuzzy because all the gifts didn't come at the same time, so we're just sort of putting it all together. Okay? Joanne asked about the labyrinth. In this same period of time, we bought new chairs for our chapel. We installed the labyrinth. A little earlier than this, we installed a new ramada right there. We added a new playground, which part of this went to the playground, and other resources helped us have a playground. We added lights to the parking lot and got all that. Did we resurface the parking lot at the same time? 2011, we resurfaced our parking lot. We got 2 new beautiful pianos and choir robes. And I didn't total all that up, but that's a couple $100,000 as well. Additionally, we added almost $600,000 to our foundation, which now has $2.8 million in it. All of this roughly around the same time. Is this too much for you? I feel like I'm looking at glazed over faces. Are you okay? Are you okay? What'd you say, Fred? Bring it on, baby. I love it. All right. All right. All right. So how much do we need this year? Phyllis says, Jimmy, it's time for the bottom line. Okay, before I do that, there's something else I want to say. I mentioned this earlier. I mention it again. Growth is not just about numbers of people in the pews, and it's not just about dollars. It's about becoming more welcoming. It's about becoming more inviting. It's about the life of the Spirit being more present in our life together. It's about a kind of joy that we find here. It's about people walking on our campus and say, literally, I feel God when I come here. It's about beauty. It's about this sense of boundless presence that we just feel when we come here. Earlier this week, I was sitting with a friend who's been a member of St. Barnabas for something like 30 years, I think this person said. And they said, just 2 years ago, I decided to get serious in my spiritual life, and I can't believe the difference it's made. When I come here, I feel love. It's like it's everywhere. And so when I attended the Living Generously dinners and when I read on our website, people are telling us what it feels like to be among us, both to be members and to be visitors, to be longtime parishioners and to be newbies. There's something special about this place. And I don't know what I don't know, obviously. So I don't know what happened before me. And I I don't think that what's happening now was not happening before the growth gift, but I do think the growth gift has enriched us, given us more possibilities to be more who we want to be and who we feel called to be, and enables us to be even more disciples of Jesus. And I would say that's the most important growth that I've experienced in the last 2 or 3 years in our life at St. Barnabas. Yes.
Hi, I'm Sky Larson, and I just want to say I think the growth gift has made a difference, but it's really come from the leadership putting it as a priority for our parish. So thank you.
Well, thank you, Sky. I'll just take it very briefly. When we received the growth gift, David Guest was Senior Warden. And we looked at each other and said, oh, now what are we going to do? You know the parable Jesus tells that you can, about the guy who gave a bag of money to a bag of talents to his servant, and he buried it in the ground? David and I looked at each other and said, do you think we could bury it in the ground? Do you think it'd be okay? Do we have to figure out how to do more ministry and mission with it? And that's what our vestry decided to do. We'd risk it. And so now to Phyllis's question, the challenge is, as this goes away, we need to grow more financially to keep being this church. That's fundamentally, of this portion of the presentation, that's what needs to happen. And basically, we need to grow about 10% a year in pledged dollars, 10% a year for 2 years. And then we'll look up at 2019 and see where we are. But this year's pledge campaign 2017 and next year's pledge campaign 2018, we need for them to grow by 10% a year. And then in 2019, we'll see. We think we'll be, that'll put us in the place to sustain the additions that I just told you about, especially the annual $200,000 additions. Jeff.
Yeah, my name's Jeff Bell, and I am Pam Bell's assistant. Jim, I'd like a little bit more information about the Saturday night service.
Yes.
And I know a lot of research went into that.
Yes.
What caused it to be unsustainable, and is it going to be in our future?
Great question. Thank you. So by the time we did a lot of research, and we thought of the Saturday night service as a church plant. And so we weren't just going to copy what we do in one of the other services on Saturday night. We were going to do something different. And we thought of that as possibly attracting a different crowd. In addition to the crowd that's here, a different demographic we were going for. So we did a lot of research, and we got consultants to help us. And it took us a year longer than we expected to launch it. And then when we got it started, we had, frankly, unwittingly to me, we launched it with expenses that would have taken 2 years to pay for themselves based upon even a liberal estimate of growth of that service. And seeing all the rest that we were doing, and saying now we need to grow by 10% a year for 2 years, the vestry and I decided it wasn't worth continuing to spend those dollars to try to get to the place 2 years from now where it would pay for itself. That doesn't mean it won't come back. It doesn't mean we couldn't do it differently, less expensively. But right now, we have enough on our plate, we're not looking at that, but it doesn't mean we won't. I want it. I still think it's a good idea. I think it's the right thing for a place like St. Barnabas to have a vibrant Saturday night service. It just didn't work this time. And I don't want to sound defensive when I say, if everything you try is successful, you probably didn't try enough. If you're going to, I love our treasurer told me, Jim, it's R&R, it's R&D, research and development, right? So this didn't work, and I'm okay with that. And I want us to have a Saturday night service. So, thank you. Any questions? Any concerns? How are we going to do that? We're going to say our prayers. And I hope we're inspired. I hope we're inspired. I hope that how you experience the life of St. Barnabas inspires you to be generous. I hope how you experience the goodness of God in your life inspires you to be generous. I hope that as you see what we do, what our mission is, that you value it such that you're inspired to be generous. And however that turns out, that's the church will be. And I am happy with that. Let me just see. Okay. So I have some handouts for you. There should be enough in each of these stacked for the table. These last two slides are on this handout for you to take with you. I want everybody to have this. Thank you. So you have that information. You have the ministry-based budget. You know that November 6th will be Gratitude Sunday, or In-Gathering Sunday. David, have I forgotten anything?
No, I think you've covered it.
We're good? Oh, yes, Scott had a question. Where's the microphone, please?
Would you say your name as well?
All right. Scott Johnson. I'm a current member of vestry. Ann, could you go back 2 slides where we showed the no, one, I'm sorry, forward 2. where we right here. This slide, I just wanted to make a comment. When this all happened, it looked like it. I was stunned that we could do what we did with that $200,000. If you really look what's going on there, $200 is a bargain. And I just wanted to make that comment.
Thank you, Scott. Thank you. So any other questions, comments, concerns?
Can I make a comment?
Please, microphone, please.
I just wanted.
Wait for the mic, please. Identify yourself, please.
So my name is Ann Hott, and I have the privilege of being around this campus 5 days a week and spend a little time here other than that also. I wanted to share with you what my experience was Thursday morning, because we were reviewed by our insurance company. The church is ours. We have this church together. It is an expression of our mission. And we had a visit from church insurance company appraisers. This gentleman and his wife are going from church to church across the country. He said that he currently has 25,000 photos of the different churches he's been to. He's about 16 months into a 2-year process. He was blown away by our church. He said, I can't believe this place. And I want you to know that. I want you to know that this man has been all over the country looking at different churches, and he said, there is something different here.
Amen. Amen. So I have one goal. I have one goal, and it's the next slide, that we would be inspired to do this. Holy God, giver of every good gift and source of all goodness, what are you calling me to pledge in response to your grace and goodness and generosity in my life? That's the goal. That we would all simply say our prayers and ask Jesus what he would have us do, and the response to that will be a great church. Amen. Let's go worship the Lord. Thank you all very much.